Wealthy millionaire proposes to Mistress, but pregnant wife finds out and divorces him on the spot. In the gilded halls of opulence, one secret can unravel everything. Meet Alexander Harrington, a powerful millionaire adored by high society and married to the graceful, pregnant Charlotte. Just when it seems his lavish lifestyle and perfect marriage couldn't be more enviable, a hidden mistress named Rebecca emerges from the shadows. A single glittering diamond ring changes the game forever when he proposes only for Charlotte to learn of his betrayal at the worst possible moment. The fallout is catastrophic, a pregnancy in jeopardy, a reputation on the line, and an unexpected divorce demanded on the spot. This, dear viewers, is a tale of love, lies, and lethal secrets. Alexander Harrington's life was a testimony to the potent mix of ambition, charm, and unyielding determination. Born to middle-class parents in a modest Boston suburb, he learned the value of hard work early on. He once regaled friends with tales of delivering newspapers at dawn, stacking grocery shelves after school, and poring over business books borrowed from the local library late into the night. By the time he stepped onto the stage at Harvard University, yes, he had managed to earn both a scholarship and part-time jobs to fund his education. He was already nurturing grand visions for his future. Graduating with honors in economics, Alexander wasted no time. He launched Harrington Investments, a hedge fund that struck gold during a boom in technology stocks. By his early 30s, Alexander had built a formidable reputation on Wall Street. Swift, meticulous, and ruthless when necessary, he ensured that every deal benefited him at least triple-fold. Magazines featured him as a rising star in finance. Photographs consistently captured his impeccable suits, hand-tailored Savile Row numbers in subtle shades of charcoal and navy, his sculpted cheekbones, and a disarming yet confident grin. But it was not only wealth that defined him. He possessed a remarkable magnetism, a personal warmth that made others feel secure. Board members, real estate moguls, start-up tech entrepreneurs, everyone gravitated toward Alexander. Some claimed it was his calm, measured voice that drew them in. Others swore it was his ability to listen intently and make you feel like the most important person in the room. But behind that charismatic facade was a man unafraid to bend rules for personal advantage. He hid that side well until, of course, everything came undone. The turning point in his personal life arrived at a lavish charity gala organized by the Forbes Foundation in New York City. That night, the city glistened with wealth. Black limousines queued along red carpets, and the clinking of champagne glasses mingled with soft jazz music. Alexander spotted Charlotte Middleton across the crowded ballroom. She was conversing politely with a small circle of philanthropists, but appeared somewhat aloof, as if she found the entire spectacle a bit too ostentatious. Tall and poised, Charlotte exuded a quiet elegance. She wore a simple emerald gown that accentuated her auburn hair and bright hazel eyes. Intrigued, Alexander introduced himself. Charlotte turned out to be an upcoming art curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, renowned for her impeccable taste and eye for modern impressionists. She was neither naive about wealth nor blinded by it. She had grown up in a well-educated family in upstate New York, not quite the same economic bracket as Alexander, but enough to be comfortable and well-traveled. She was serious about her work, determined but with a soft spot for genuine connections. They danced that night, a slow, cautious waltz in the midst of swirling couples. By the end of the gala, Alexander had escorted her to her car, feeling a rush of excitement he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few months, he pursued her with a fierce desire. He sent her carefully selected bouquets of lilies and calla lilies, including little notes referencing art pieces she mentioned enjoying. He didn't shower her with lavish gifts, which he easily could have, but thoughtful tokens that demonstrated his commitment and attentiveness. Soon, their romance flourished. Charlotte admired his fierce dedication, his philanthropic undertakings, and the way he interacted with people from all walks of life. Her discerning eye told her that while he was powerful and ambitious, he was also vulnerable beneath the slick veneer, someone who desired real companionship. Alexander, for his part, found in Charlotte a moral compass that anchored him. She was unwaveringly honest, and her convictions challenged him to become a better man. When he proposed to her one sunlit afternoon in Central Park, in front of Bethesda Terrace, she accepted without hesitation. She truly believed she had found a partner for life. Their wedding was a modest affair, by billionaire standards, fewer than 200 guests. A cozy ceremony in the historical Lyman Estate in Waltham, Massachusetts. Still, the guest list was peppered with prominent figures, CEOs of major corporations, hedge fund power players, and even a few celebrities who had become casual acquaintances. The media labeled the event an elegant union of brains and billions. Shortly after, Alexander and Charlotte purchased a stately townhouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side. The property was lavish, boasting 6 floors, a roof garden, and an in-house staff. Yet Charlotte worked diligently to make it feel like a home rather than a showpiece. For a while, things were perfect, or so it seemed. Alexander maintained his scorching pace in the investment world, and Charlotte continued curating groundbreaking art exhibitions at the Met. They supported each other's dreams wholeheartedly, rarely giving ear to rumors about Alexander's potential indiscretions. The power couple's social circle included the likes of Robert Greene, a media mogul known for his flamboyant lifestyle, and Teresa Smith, an influential publicist who curated events for the city's elites. They traveled together, attended fundraising galas, sipped cocktails at newly opened rooftop bars with unobstructed city views, and all seemed sparkling on the surface. But beneath that glamorous veneer lurked small cracks, barely noticeable at first. Alexander frequently found himself having after-hours meetings, plush dinners at exclusive restaurants, and extended business trips that conveniently overlapped with hush-hush events. Charlotte, though suspicious, let it pass, rationalizing that such was the nature of a high-stakes finance career. After all, Alexander was a millionaire in a cutthroat field, and he needed to be present to close deals. Little did she know that soon one such deal would become a ticking time bomb in their marriage. Rebecca Marshall was anything but ordinary. She hailed from a small industrial town in Ohio, a place of rusting factories and battered trucks, overshadowed by financial hardship. Determined not to be trapped by her circumstances, she moved to New York with dreams bigger than the Manhattan skyline. She wanted success, wealth, recognition, the good life she saw glorified in magazines and on social media. By her early 20s, she had worked her way into circles that granted her invitations to exclusive parties and investment summits, often as a glorified companion for older financiers. She had mastered the art of forging acquaintances with influential men. She was undeniably captivating, tall, slender, with raven black hair that curled gracefully at her shoulders. Her style effortlessly blended sophistication and understated boldness. She learned quickly that knowledge was power, while her outward charm was disarming. She was also an avid reader of business journals, well versed in the lingo and developments of the financial world. Men found it a rare combination, someone who would smile and sip champagne, but could also hold her own in a discussion about the Federal Reserve's interest rate policies. Rebecca first noticed Alexander Harrington at a hedge fund conference in Miami. She had accompanied a minor investor named Jacob Turner, who introduced her as his associate. Alexander was the keynote speaker that afternoon. Standing at the podium in a tailored navy suit, he spoke with his trademark calm confidence about market volatility, risk tolerance, and investment strategies. Rebecca observed how the entire room hung on his every word. After the talk, she made her move casually, discreetly, so as not to appear desperate. She caught Alexander's attention by asking him a technical question about emerging markets in Southeast Asia. He seemed pleased by the query, and the conversation drifted into more casual talk about travel, the humid Miami weather, and the best restaurants in the city. Alexander was polite but kept a professional distance, yet Rebecca's intuition told her that a door had cracked open, and she vowed to wedge it wide. In the weeks following the conference, she found ways to intersect his orbit. She discovered that Harrington Investments held monthly networking events. She managed to get her name on the guest list through Jacob Turner's connections. When Alexander saw her at these gatherings, a part of him was flattered. Her sharp intellect, combined with a subtle flirtatiousness, was a refreshing change from the usual sycophants he encountered. They shared banter, discussing everything from global trade wars to philanthropic initiatives. Over time, a comfortable rapport formed between them. But it was at a private event, an exclusive fundraiser for hurricane relief in the Bahamas, where lines blurred. The fundraiser took place at the Cloud Room, a skyscraper venue with glass walls that showcased the entire Manhattan skyline. Alexander had invited Charlotte, but she was unwell that evening, an early sign of her pregnancy fatigue. He attended alone, meeting clients, shaking hands, sealing deals. Rebecca was there, in a figure-hugging black gown, her bright eyes searching the crowd. Late into the evening, amid slow jazz tunes and scarce attendees, they found themselves alone on a terrace with glasses of fine champagne. Rebecca confided in him about her upbringing, how she had clawed her way into these circles by learning every nuance of high society. There was something raw and vulnerable in her story, perhaps carefully curated to appeal to Alexander's sense of empathy. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself oddly entranced. Charlotte's supportive presence at home had always been unwavering, but here stood a woman who embodied a certain daring spirit, an eagerness to manipulate fate rather than wait for it. Their conversation stretched past midnight, and a certain palpable tension crackled in the cool night air. Before leaving, Rebecca kissed him lightly on the cheek and whispered, "We should continue this conversation sometime." That single moment was the catalyst. For days after, Alexander wrestled with guilt, replaying the encounter. He told himself it was harmless, that he'd never truly jeopardize his marriage. But the next time he was in town alone, he did call her. They met for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a few stolen hours at a boutique hotel, carefully chosen in a quieter part of Soho to avoid paparazzi or acquaintances. So began their clandestine relationship. Under normal circumstances, perhaps it might have stayed a fleeting affair, but something deeper caught hold. Rebecca's ambitions meshed well with Alexander's personality. He liked control. She liked the possibilities that arose from being in close orbit to a powerful man. They were like two predators circling each other, feeding off each other's confidence and drive. He admired her canny insights, how she never apologized for wanting more than she had. She admired his power and saw him as her golden ticket to the top echelons of society. Their secret trysts became more frequent, carefully orchestrated around Alexander's business trips. Rebecca used burner phones to communicate, always discreet, never texting or calling at suspicious times. Alexander lavished her with gifts, designer handbags, diamond earrings, extravagant dinners, though she was clever enough to donate or store them away to avoid raising eyebrows. In public, she remained just another sophisticated business associate he might casually greet. But in private, they built a world of whispered promises and illusions of a future that would prove disastrous. Back at the Harrington townhouse, Charlotte was nursing a suspicion that something was off. She noticed that Alexander's business calls were more frequent, his late-night meetings more mysterious, and his affection at times seemed forced. Still, she chalked it up to the high demands of a competitive industry. All top executives go through these stressful phases, she would remind herself. And perhaps, had it not been for a life-changing revelation, she might have dug deeper into her husband's behavior. But fate had other plans. One crisp morning, Charlotte woke up feeling unusually nauseous and dizzy. She had an exhibition opening that day, an exclusive display of postmodern sculptures from emerging African artists, but she struggled to even sip her tea. Concerned, she decided to see a doctor. A few hours and one blood test later, she was told she was pregnant. The news was both thrilling and terrifying. She had always wanted children, but had been concerned about finding the right time, given her career and Alexander's hectic schedule. She paced the living room that evening, planning how to break the news to her husband. A million emotions coursed through her mind: excitement, anxiety, hope for the future. When Alexander arrived home, exhausted from a work meeting, Charlotte met him at the door. She led him to the sofa and quietly handed him the test results, tears of happiness welling in her eyes. For a moment, Alexander felt the ground shift beneath him. He saw the words "positive pregnancy result" and realized their lives were about to change. A father. That notion had once made him giddy with anticipation when he and Charlotte had discussed starting a family. But now, guilt gnawed at him. How could he be bringing a child into a world where he was lying and cheating on his wife? Nonetheless, his immediate reaction was one of cautious joy. He embraced Charlotte, told her he loved her, that they would handle this together, and that he was proud of her. Charlotte felt the tension in his hug, but she attributed it to the shock of the news. Over the next few days, she was inundated with congratulatory calls from close friends. Teresa Smith, the couple's longtime publicist friend, sent a gorgeous bouquet. Robert Greene invited them to a celebratory dinner, which they politely declined because of Charlotte's fragile state. It seemed everyone in their circle was overjoyed by the news. Alexander tried to distance himself from Rebecca, if only temporarily. The reality of impending fatherhood made him question the affair. He sent her a curt text. "Need some space. Something urgent has come up. We'll call soon." But Rebecca, a master at reading between the lines, sensed something more was going on. She heard whispers in social circles about Charlotte's pregnancy rumors swirling at dinner parties and galas, and her heart hardened. She had banked on Alexander, viewing her as a crucial part of his future, not just a fling. Now, a baby threatened to alter that dynamic. Charlotte, entirely unaware of her husband's double life, immersed herself in the new reality of being an expecting mother. She started reading parenting books, planning how to merge her career with motherhood, and rearranging the townhouse to create a nursery. Alexander joined her on some of these tasks, painting the future child's room a warm cream color, flipping through baby name guides, and even going to prenatal checkups. For fleeting moments, he almost convinced himself that he could bury the affair and turn over a new leaf, become the devoted husband and father Charlotte deserved. But guilt is a stubborn weed. It grows, tangles, and surfaces in unexpected ways. Whenever he saw Charlotte glowing with maternal joy, it reminded him of his deceit. His phone calls to Rebecca remained minimal, but he would occasionally check her social media or texts to reassure himself. She was okay. Whenever he told Charlotte he loved her, a tinge of shame stained the words. As Charlotte's belly started to show, the Harrington family received even more public attention. Tabloids speculated about how the millionaire's heir would inherit a fortune, how the child might grow up among old money and new power alliances. Meanwhile, Charlotte tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Despite pregnancy fatigue, she successfully curated a new exhibition focusing on underrepresented women artists. She turned her unborn child into her new source of motivation, bridging her personal joy with her professional passion. But life rarely grants smooth roads to the unsuspecting. Beneath the veneer of baby bliss, a tempest was brewing. Rebecca, emboldened by her ambition and terrified of losing her grip on Alexander, was about to make a move that would shock everyone. Rebecca's patience was wearing thin. She had played her role well, a discreet companion believing that Alexander would eventually realize she was more than just an accessory. Yet now, with Charlotte's pregnancy occupying center stage, she felt sidelined, and it infuriated her. She had clawed her way to this rung of the social ladder. She wasn't about to let go without a fight. She initiated contact again, this time by sending Alexander a cryptic email to his private address. "We need to talk. Urgent." She provided a date, time, and a location, a secluded lounge at the Park Hyatt. Alexander tried ignoring the email at first, but felt a pang of dread. He knew ignoring it would be a mistake. So, on a Wednesday evening, right after dropping Charlotte off at the Met, he told his driver he had a personal matter to attend to. He slipped into the Park Hyatt unnoticed, wearing a casual blazer instead of his usual suit, hoping not to draw attention. The lounge was dimly lit, with plush chairs and an ambient hum of piano music. Rebecca stood by the window, her silhouette highlighted by the city lights. She wore a fitted burgundy dress, her dark hair swept to one side. Alexander approached, his heart pounding. She turned, her expression a mix of anger, hurt, and steely determination. He motioned for them to sit, but she remained standing, arms crossed. "You've been avoiding me," she began, voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I haven't been avoiding you," he lied. "I've been busy with your pregnant wife." She cut him off, narrowing her eyes. "Funny how that never stopped you before. Or was I just your little secret until something better came along?" Her words stung. Alexander tried to remain composed. "Rebecca, you knew my situation from the start. I never promised anything beyond—" She slammed her hand on the small table, rattling the glassware. "No, you promised me the possibility of more. You said you needed time to figure things out with Charlotte." She inhaled sharply. "And now she's pregnant. So, what? Everything changes?" Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a sure sign of his anxiety. "I'm trying to do the right thing. I have responsibilities. How convenient," Rebecca sneered. "Suddenly, you've discovered your moral compass." The tension was suffocating. A couple across the lounge glanced their way, obviously sensing the hostility. Lowering her voice, Rebecca gripped Alexander's hand. "Look, I don't want to destroy your life, but I refuse to be cast aside. I've invested in you, in us." He wanted to protest that it was never them, but guilt and some twisted affection held him back. Instead, he tried placating her. "We need to keep this discreet. I'm about to become a father." Rebecca leaned in, her tone shifting from anger to quiet threat. "If you think you can just walk away and play happy family, think again. I've got emails, texts, photos, and I'm not afraid to use them. Let's be reasonable. You know I'm not some gold-digging nobody." She paused, letting her words linger. "I'm done waiting. If you really care about me, I need something more concrete. A commitment. A ring." Alexander felt the weight of her ultimatum like a punch to the gut. Proposing to Rebecca was unthinkable. Yet the fear of a public scandal, especially now, with Charlotte's pregnancy, made his head spin. "You want marriage?" he croaked out, incredulous. "At least an engagement," she demanded. "I need to know you're serious." He stared at the floor, his pulse hammering. If he refused outright, she might go public. If he agreed, he'd sink deeper into a web of lies. Rebecca softened her voice, sensing his inner turmoil. "I'm not heartless, Alexander, but I have to protect myself. I can't be the second choice." And in that moment, he realized that his carefully orchestrated life was hanging by a thread. Walking away risked everything. So did giving in. But Alexander, for the first time in his life, felt truly trapped. He left the lounge more conflicted than ever, promising Rebecca he'd think about her demands. Charlotte noticed changes in Alexander's demeanor almost immediately. He was distant, lost in thought, and sometimes downright skittish when his phone buzzed. She tried to attribute it to the pressure of business, combined with the stress of impending fatherhood. Yet, late at night, an unshakable anxiety took root in her mind. She found herself scrutinizing him more carefully, how he avoided eye contact when she mentioned the future, how he seemed on edge whenever she answered his phone. One afternoon, she decided to drop by his office unannounced, hoping a spontaneous lunch might alleviate tensions and give them a moment of closeness. She arrived at Harrington Investments around noon. The staff recognized her immediately. Miss S. Harrington was always treated with respect, if not reverence. She glided through the spacious reception area, where a large, modern sculpture of intertwined metal rods reflected the scale of Alexander's ambitions. She took the private elevator up to the executive floor. His personal assistant, Hannah Hastings, looked startled to see Charlotte. "Miss S. Harrington, I didn't know you were coming. Is Mr. Harrington expecting you?" Charlotte smiled politely. It was meant to be a surprise. "Is he in a meeting?" Hannah hesitated. "He's finishing up with a client. I'll let him know you're here." As Charlotte waited, she heard raised voices coming from Alexander's office. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost desperate. Hannah looked uncomfortable, not wanting to intrude, but Charlotte's curiosity spiked. Eventually, the voices subsided and the door opened. Out walked Jacob Turner, a face Charlotte recognized from prior investment events. He looked flustered, clutching some documents tightly. He offered Charlotte a brief nod and hurried past. Charlotte stepped into Alexander's office. He was sitting behind his massive glass desk, massaging his temples. He looked surprised, then forced a smile. "Charlotte, what a lovely surprise." "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes darting around as if looking for clues. He exhaled. "Just a difficult negotiation with a partner. Nothing to worry about." They embraced, and for a moment she let the comfort of his arms steady her, but something felt off, like he was holding back. She produced a picnic basket. "I thought we could do lunch together." Alexander's face softened. "That's a great idea. Honestly, I could use a break." They spread out the contents: charcuterie, fresh fruit, an assortment of pastries on a small round table by the window. The office had a panoramic view of Central Park. The greenery and skyline created a postcard-like backdrop, which contrasted sharply with the tension swirling in Alexander's personal life. They chatted about the baby, nursery preparations, and her upcoming exhibit expansions. Yet she sensed he was only half listening. At one point, Charlotte gently touched his arm. "Alexander, if something's bothering you, you can tell me. We're a team, remember?" He looked away, swallowing hard. "It's just business stress. These deals can be draining." She nodded, half convinced. But as she left his office that day, Charlotte felt a gnawing suspicion that there was more to it than just business. Still, she resolved to give him the benefit of the doubt, trusting that fatherhood would bring them closer eventually. Rebecca stood by a floor-to-ceiling mirror in her upscale studio apartment in Midtown. She observed her reflection, flawless makeup, designer dress, and considered the image she projected to the world, a woman of power, or at least someone intimately close to it. But for all the trappings of luxury Alexander had afforded her, she still felt the sting of uncertainty. Her personal phone pinged a message from her cousin, Linda Marshall, who lived back in Ohio. Linda asked if Rebecca might come home for a weekend family gathering. The idea of returning to that gritty environment of dead-end jobs and battered neighborhoods repelled her. She typed a non-committal response, explaining she was incredibly busy but would try to make time. She hated how fake she felt, but she also knew she couldn't let that old life drag her back. Rebecca set the phone aside and opened her laptop. She reviewed the material she had on Alexander, photos of them at a private villa in the Hamptons, text message screenshots referencing intimate rendezvous, even a couple of love notes he had jotted on hotel stationery. A part of her felt guilty for archiving these tokens like weapons, but survival in a high-stakes game required leverage. She recalled how Jacob Turner had introduced her into these circles. Initially, he had been her ticket in, but once she established her connection with Alexander, she drifted away from Jacob's orbit. He was a stepping stone, nothing more. She had no illusions about romance or loyalty in that arrangement. Her real endgame was security, influence, and the lavish lifestyle she believed she deserved. Deep down, Rebecca was terrified Alexander would ghost her entirely, leaving her with nothing. She wasn't naive. She knew that a man with his resources could bury scandals if he had enough motivation. A hush payment here, a threatened lawsuit there, and suddenly she might find her credibility shattered. This possibility fueled her desperation to secure a more lasting commitment. Grabbing her phone, she contemplated texting him. Their last conversation had ended with his ambivalent promise to think about her demands. She typed a message, then deleted it. Typed again and deleted. Finally, she wrote, "We should talk soon. I want an update on your decision." Hitting send, she stared at the screen, her heart pounding. A million what-ifs churned in her mind. What if he decided to stay with Charlotte fully and bury the affair? What if he tried to pay her off to keep her silence? The thought filled her with disgust and shame, yet part of her rationalized that any large sum could set her up comfortably for life. But money alone wouldn't restore her pride. She wanted to be recognized as someone who had won Alexander Harrington's heart, proof that she had transcended her humble beginnings once and for all. And so the stakes climbed higher, the tension mounting. Alexander's nights became sleepless. He dreaded the possibility that Rebecca would expose him. Equally, he couldn't stomach the idea of continuing the facade indefinitely. He consulted his old friend, Robert Greene, though in a very cryptic manner, never divulging the full truth. He simply said he was in a compromising situation with a woman, and Robert's eyebrows instantly shot up. "Alexander, you have to handle it carefully. These matters can ruin reputations, derail business deals." Robert was a man who had survived multiple scandals, from lawsuits to ugly divorces. He knew the cost of public humiliation. "If you need to hush her up, do it legally and discreetly. I know a couple of crisis managers who can help." Alexander felt uneasy discussing such extremes. He half-joked, "Maybe I should just end it and pray for the best." Robert gave him a long look. Prayer might not suffice if she has evidence. And if the media get hold of this, especially with Charlotte pregnant, it'll be a disaster. That same evening, Alexander sought refuge in a bottle of expensive scotch in his private study at home. Charlotte had already gone to bed, tired from her pregnancy. He stared at the flickering glow of a fireplace, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Rebecca's ultimatum replayed in his mind. She wanted an engagement ring. If he even considered it, how would he hide it from Charlotte? And if Charlotte ever discovered the ring, the heartbreak would be unimaginable. Despite everything, a part of Alexander still cared deeply for Charlotte. He recalled the early days of their relationship, her unwavering faith in him, her moral compass guiding him toward charitable endeavors he otherwise might have neglected. The thought of hurting her was almost unbearable, but reality was relentless. He had made a series of decisions that now cornered him. Finally, in a moment of desperation, he made a fateful decision. He would propose to Rebecca, give her the ring as a temporary measure to keep her silent until the baby arrived. After that, he would attempt to negotiate an exit from the arrangement. Perhaps he'd claim a change of heart, or that fatherhood had shifted his priorities entirely. It was a gamble, a horrific betrayal of Charlotte, but he told himself he had no choice. The next day, he met with a private jeweler, Leonard Dupont, known for crafting custom pieces for the city's elite. Leonard raised an eyebrow at Alexander's odd request, an extravagant engagement ring, but with absolute secrecy. Alexander chose a lavish, pear-shaped diamond, set in rose gold, meticulously designed with a halo of smaller stones. It gleamed with the brilliance of heartbreak waiting to happen. Leonard asked, "Shall I address this to Miss S. Harrington, or?" Alexander forced a smile. "No, I'll pick it up personally. No documentation in my name. We'll keep this off the books with a cash payment." Leonard complied. His line of work often demanded discretion. By the time Alexander left the jewelry showroom, the ring tucked in an inconspicuous black velvet pouch. He felt as though he had just purchased a ticket to his own doom. Rebecca arranged for them to meet at a luxury penthouse rental in Tribeca, a space she had booked for a weekend getaway. In truth, she wanted a private setting that didn't tie her to her own apartment or any place Alexander might be recognized. The penthouse was stunning floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, a minimalist decor of white leather sofas, abstract artwork, and a glass coffee table that glistened under recessed lighting. Alexander arrived just before sunset, tension radiating through him. He clutched the velvet pouch in his pocket, feeling the weight of the ring like a lead anchor. Rebecca greeted him wearing a teal silk dress, her hair pinned up elegantly, her makeup flawless. She looked every bit the high society partner she aspired to be. She motioned for him to sit at the small dining area, where champagne chilled in a bucket. He obliged, heart hammering. They clinked glasses, forcing a semblance of civility. Rebecca broke the silence. "So, you said you have something to tell me?" Alexander cleared his throat. "Rebecca, this is complicated. But you know that I know you're torn," she interrupted, her voice softening. "But I'm glad you're finally doing the right thing. For us," he couldn't bring himself to correct her. Instead, he set his glass down and slowly took the ring out, placing it on the table between them. The diamond sparkled even under the subtle pendant lights. Rebecca's eyes widened, a breath caught in her throat, tears threatening to surface. "Rebecca Marshall," Alexander began, his voice unsteady. He paused, swallowing hard. "Will you be mine?" It was a hollow script, words he'd rehearsed without conviction. But to Rebecca, this was her moment of triumph. She didn't question the authenticity of his pledge. She slid the ring onto her finger, tears brimming. "Yes," she whispered, letting out a shaky laugh. She threw her arms around him, hugging him tight. For a fleeting second, guilt overwhelmed him so powerfully he thought he might break down. They spent the evening discussing superficial details about what their future might look like. Rebecca talked about a possible wedding destination she fantasized, about Lake Como in Italy, or perhaps a private estate in the south of France. She seemed to have an entire life story mapped out, brimming with illusions. Alexander merely nodded, occasionally offering half-hearted suggestions. Late into the night, they fell asleep in each other's arms, Rebecca brimming with a twisted sense of victory, Alexander tormented by self-loathing. When morning dawned, the clarity of daylight hit him like a sledgehammer. He left before she awoke, scrawling a note, "I'll be in touch. Need to handle some affairs." Then he slipped away, consumed by dread of what lay ahead. Just when Alexander thought he might have contained the crisis, fate orchestrated a cruel twist. Charlotte's close friend, Teresa Smith, was in charge of public relations for a slew of high-profile clients. She often monitored social media for potential gossip or brand-damaging leaks. Over her morning coffee, she spotted something strange, a post from an anonymous gossip account claiming a famous billionaire fiancé had just proposed to his secret lover. The post included a blurred image of a pear-shaped diamond ring, suspiciously similar to one she'd seen in Alexander's circle. Concerned, Teresa dug deeper, applying her PR instincts. She cross-referenced the diamond ring design with local jewelers known for serving the ultra-rich. One lead pointed to Leonard Dupont's name. Intrigued and worried, she made discreet inquiries. Dupont denied revealing anything to an outsider, but Teresa sensed something was off. That same afternoon, Charlotte was at home, feeling particularly fatigued from her pregnancy. She had dozed off in the living room, near the phone Alexander insisted she always keep with her. Suddenly, the landline rang. Groggy, she answered, without checking the caller ID. Charlotte. Teresa's urgent voice crackled. I need to talk to you in person. It's about Alexander. A jolt of apprehension spread through Charlotte. Teresa, you're scaring me. What is it? I'd rather tell you face to face, Teresa insisted. I'm coming over now. Within an hour, Teresa arrived, her expression grim. She explained the rumor swirling around social media, showed Charlotte the anonymous gossip post. Charlotte's hand shook as she stared at the image of the ring. You think that's Alexander? Teresa hesitated. I'm not sure, Charlotte, but it's possible. The description says it's a hush-hush proposal, done in secret, and he's definitely in the right circle. Plus, I know how rings from Dupont look, they're distinctive. Charlotte felt her world tilting. She tried to breathe, tried to remain rational, but that's not enough proof. It could be anyone. Teresa nodded. I agree, but let's check your credit card or bank transactions, anything from Dupont Jewelers. Charlotte, feeling sick to her stomach, pulled up their joint accounts. Nothing indicated a jewelry purchase from Dupont, but Alexander, if he was hiding something, might have used cash or a separate account. Time seemed to crawl as they combed through statements. Finally, Teresa asked, does he have a safe or a study here? Yes, Charlotte replied, remembering Alexander's locked drawer in his study. While part of Charlotte felt uneasy about violating her husband's privacy, dread compelled her to open the drawer. She knew the combination her birthday. Inside, she found property documents, some confidential investment files, and a single black velvet pouch with Dupont's insignia. Her heart raced as she opened it, only to find it empty, no ring inside. But the presence of the pouch alone confirmed something sinister. Alexander had recently acquired an engagement ring from Dupont. Tears clouded her vision. Teresa reached over, gently rubbing her back. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. This doesn't look good. Charlotte's mind reeled. Why would Alexander buy an engagement ring if not for her? They were already married. A nauseating wave of betrayal washed over her. She felt the baby move inside her, as if the unborn child was sensing her turmoil. Teresa stayed with Charlotte for hours, trying to comfort her. They discussed possible scenarios. Could Alexander have bought it for a business partner's gift? A philanthropic raffle? But deep down, both knew the truth was more likely an affair. By evening, Charlotte's tears were replaced by a cold resolve. She needed to confront him, find the truth. She called him repeatedly, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She paced the living room, her heart pounding. Finally, near midnight, the door creaked open. Alexander entered, looking tired and distracted. He froze upon seeing Charlotte's tear-stained face and Teresa standing stiffly in the background. What's going on? He asked, voice shaky. Charlotte glared at him, brandishing the empty velvet pouch. You tell me, Alexander, why do you have a Dupont ring pouch hidden in your drawer? His face went pale. For a moment, he looked like a deer in headlights. Teresa eyed him with contempt. He stammered. It's not what you think, Charlotte snorted, tears brimming again. Oh, really? Then explain. Because from where I stand, it looks exactly like you're cheating on me, and you bought someone an engagement ring." Alexander, trapped by the weight of his lies, could only sputter half-formed excuses. Finally, the truth tumbled out in fragments. He had been seeing someone else. He felt forced to propose because she threatened to expose him. He wanted to protect Charlotte and the baby, or so he claimed. But each word was like a dagger to Charlotte's heart. By the end of his confession, Charlotte trembled with rage, heartbreak, and betrayal. Teresa stood silently, tears in her own eyes for her friend. Charlotte took a deep breath, then spoke in a voice that brooked no argument. "Get out of this house, Alexander. We're done." He tried to plead, to beg for her forgiveness, but she was unwavering. "You made a fool of me, and you put our child at risk with your deceit. I want a divorce." She ended it then and there, shattering what remained of his carefully crafted world. News travels fast in elite circles. Within hours, rumors spread that Charlotte Harrington had thrown Alexander out of their townhouse. Social media buzzed with speculations. Gossip columns leaped on the story, hinting at an affair with an unnamed woman. Photographers camped outside Harrington Investments and the townhouse, hoping to snap a photo of the estranged spouses. Charlotte stayed indoors, shutting off her phone except for essential calls from her doctor and immediate family. The shock of Alexander's betrayal, combined with pregnancy, was almost too much to bear. Teresa stepped up, acting as a gatekeeper. She instructed the household staff to turn away visitors and reject interviews. Alexander, now holed up in a luxury suite at the Four Seasons, was bombarded with messages. Rebecca demanded to know what was happening. She had caught wind of the scandal from social media and was both terrified and thrilled. She had, in one sense, won. Alexander was now free from Charlotte, but at what cost? The press coverage threatened to smear her name, expose her as the mistress. She confronted him over the phone, panicking about how this might affect her reputation. Meanwhile, Robert Greene reached out, urging Alexander to conduct damage control. "You can't just hide in a hotel, man. The board is concerned about how this will impact the company's image. You need a plan." A public statement. Alexander felt paralyzed. He had lost Charlotte, the woman he truly loved, despite all his missteps. And now, ironically, he was stuck with Rebecca, a woman he wasn't sure he even trusted. On the legal front, Charlotte wasted no time. She contacted an attorney named Hannah Williamson, recommended by Teresa. Hannah was known for championing women's rights in high-stakes divorce cases. During their first meeting, Charlotte could barely keep her composure. She recounted Alexander's infidelity, the ring, the emotional distress. Hannah listened patiently, then explained the steps to initiate divorce proceedings. "You're in a strong position, Charlotte," Hannah reassured. "Given that you're pregnant, the courts will be sympathetic to your situation. Alexander has significant assets, and we can negotiate a favorable settlement. But more importantly, we need to protect you emotionally. This is going to be a fight." Charlotte squared her shoulders, her heartbreak turning into determination. She wanted no illusions of reconciliation. Her only concern now was ensuring the financial security and emotional well-being of her unborn child. Even as she steeled herself, though, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sadness, the heartbreak of losing the man she once believed was her soulmate. She mourned the future they had painted, raising a child in a loving household, traveling to exotic destinations as a family, supporting each other's ambitions. All of that had been obliterated by Alexander's lies. In the days that followed, the tabloids exploded with headlines, "Billionaire Harrington's secret mistress exposed," and "Pregnant wife demands divorce." Paparazzi staked out the Met Museum, hoping to catch Charlotte. A few staff members at Harrington Investments leaked rumors about the tension in the office. Unverified sources claimed that Alexander's personal assistant heard him yelling at a mystery woman on the phone. The scandal was unstoppable, a tidal wave of humiliation. Charlotte braced herself, remembering her unborn child. She rubbed her stomach, whispering that they would be okay, that she would protect them from the storm. Yet, each night, she cried herself to sleep, reliving the betrayal, feeling her heart shatter anew. Rebecca, for her part, found the public scrutiny a double-edged sword. She was secretly relieved that Alexander was no longer tied to Charlotte, but she detested how the media painted her as a cunning homewrecker. Anonymous trolls on social media unleashed vile comments, calling her gold digger, whore, and worse. Some threatened her with harassment. She demanded Alexander do something about it. He tried issuing a carefully worded statement through Robert Greene's PR agency, claiming he took full responsibility for the breakdown of his marriage and asked for privacy. Nowhere did he mention Rebecca's name, though the tabloids already had pictures of her leaving exclusive hotels in the past. The statement did little to quiet the media storm. Harrington Investments took a hit. Investors worried about the founder's scandal overshadowing the company's performance. The board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the possibility of Alexander stepping back temporarily. Furious that his personal life had bled into business, Alexander resisted, but the board insisted on an interim CEO to maintain public confidence. Reluctantly, he agreed. Meanwhile, Charlotte's divorce case progressed swiftly. Hannah Williamson filed in New York courts, citing irreconcilable differences and marital misconduct. In an age of high-profile divorces, this one promised to be especially messy, given the unborn child and the Mistress fiasco. The law firm spelled out the demands: a substantial alimony, child support, and significant property settlement. Charlotte tried to avoid being vindictive, but she also recognized that Alexander owed her a sense of security after upending her life. Friends rallied around Charlotte. Teresa practically moved in with her, ensuring she ate well and attended prenatal checkups. The museum staff were discreetly supportive, stepping in to lighten her workload. Even Robert Greene called her privately, apologizing for Alexander's behavior and offering help if she needed it. She thanked him, but declined. In a surprisingly human gesture, Alexander tried to reach out to Charlotte multiple times, leaving voicemails and sending messages that remained unanswered. He wrote lengthy emails, apologizing profusely, begging for a conversation. Charlotte read them, but never responded. She found no solace in his words, only more pain. As the days turned into weeks, the tension escalated. The paparazzi wanted pictures of Charlotte's growing baby bump. They wanted the scoop on whether Alexander and Rebecca would move in together, marry publicly. Rebecca, for all her cunning, was unprepared for this level of vitriol and stalking. She felt trapped, longing for a time when she maneuvered in the shadows without being the center of a scandal. At night, Alexander and Rebecca argued incessantly. She accused him of not standing by her publicly. He accused her of pressuring him into a disastrous proposal. Their relationship became a toxic battleground, each realizing that lust and ambition might not survive the glare of reality. Still, they clung to each other out of desperation, neither wanting to face the consequences alone. Months passed, and the divorce proceedings approached their final stages. Charlotte's baby bump was now very noticeable, and she found solace in the quiet routine of preparing for the child. She purchased essentials, set up a nursery, and even took a few prenatal yoga classes recommended by friends. An underlying strength welled within her, the maternal instinct to protect and nurture life. The tabloids had slowly moved on to other scandals, although occasional updates about the Harrington divorce still appeared. The public, easily bored, found fresh prey. That was a small mercy. Charlotte managed to maintain a semblance of privacy, focusing on her health and the child's well-being. In a sudden turn of events, Harrington Investments made a major announcement. Alexander Harrington would be stepping down as CEO permanently, citing personal reasons. The official press release claimed it was amicable and that he would remain a major shareholder. Insiders knew it was partly forced by the board, who cited irreparable brand damage. For his part, Alexander seemed strangely relieved. He had grown weary of the relentless demands of high finance. He also hoped to salvage some part of his relationship with Charlotte, even if only as co-parents. Rebecca, though momentarily supportive of him, found her illusions of a glamorous future with Alexander waning. Without the shining power seat at Harrington Investments, was he still the golden ticket she had pursued? Their arguments escalated. She urged him to invest in a new venture, to reassert his dominance. He found himself exhausted, unmotivated, and riddled with remorse. The final blow to their relationship came when she demanded they set a wedding date, and he refused. "I can't marry you, Rebecca," he finally admitted, his voice defeated. "Not like this. My life is a disaster. We barely get along, I'm sorry." She slapped him in a final heated exchange, calling him a coward, before storming out of his hotel suite. The next day, she checked out, leaving no forwarding address. The ring stayed on her finger for now, but the hollow promise it represented was laid bare. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after that. Charlotte secured a generous settlement. Joint custody arrangements would be addressed once the baby was born. Although she agreed to keep a civil line of communication open for the child's sake, she made it clear there was no room for reconciliation. Alexander was allowed to attend prenatal appointments if he wished, but he appeared only once, standing awkwardly in the background while the doctor performed an ultrasound. Charlotte held it together, focusing on the whooshing sound of the baby's heartbeat instead of the tension in the room. When the baby finally arrived, a beautiful girl they named Amelia Charlotte felt a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. She held Amelia close, tears of relief and love streaming down her face. She had survived betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak, yet in her arms was a tiny being who represented hope and new beginnings. Alexander arrived at the hospital, anxious and remorseful. Charlotte allowed him a brief moment to hold Amelia. She watched him cradle the infant, tears glistening in his eyes. She understood that despite everything, he was Amelia's father. A part of her still felt a shred of empathy for the man she once loved. But her boundaries were firm. He would never again have the privilege of her trust. In the following months, Alexander tried to piece his life back together. He started a modest venture capital fund, ironically focusing on ethical tech startups. He rented a smaller townhouse far from the Upper East Side drama. Occasionally he visited Amelia, bringing gifts and attempting to bond with her in short intervals. Charlotte, however, maintained control. She allowed the visits under strict conditions, ensuring Amelia's well-being remained paramount. Rebecca, meanwhile, popped up in society pages now and then, often photographed with other wealthy men. Rumors circulated that she had parted ways with Alexander. Eventually, she sold the diamond ring he'd given her. Some said she used the funds for an extravagant shopping spree in Paris. Others claimed she invested it in a rumored real estate project. Whichever version was true, she had moved on, chasing the dream that first brought her to New York. Charlotte continued her work at the Met, albeit on a less grueling schedule to accommodate her new responsibilities as a mother. She found joy in curating art that celebrated resilience, transformation, and the power of human creativity. She saw reflections of her own journey in those artworks, surviving heartbreak and emerging stronger. And so, life moved on. The scandal became just another footnote in the ever-revolving narrative of high society drama. For Charlotte, the most important chapter was yet to be written, raising Amelia with love, instilling in her a sense of self-worth and honesty that would never be eroded by wealth or power. For Alexander, it was an ongoing lesson in regret, redemption, and the simple truth that betrayal, once wrought, can rarely be undone. In the end, the story of the millionaire proposes to mistress but pregnant wife, finds out and divorces him on the spot, became cautionary fodder for tabloids and a whispered parable among Manhattan's elite. But for those who lived it, Charlotte, Alexander, and even Rebecca, it was a painful, transformative chapter that none would soon forget. From the very first spark of forbidden attraction to the fiery collision of betrayal, Alexander Harrington's tale is a potent reminder that secrets can unravel even the most glittering facade. His affair with Rebecca may have offered momentary thrills, but the cost was devastating: a shattered marriage and the heartbreak of a pregnant wife forced to stand alone. Yet from the ashes, Charlotte rose stronger, determined to secure a better life for herself and her child. In the world of the ultra-wealthy, reputations hang by threads, and a single scandal can scorch an entire empire. Still, redemption often lies in facing one's failures head-on and forging a path toward authenticity and healing.
Sometimes the most unexpected betrayals are the ones that shatter our entire reality. Picture a loving mother, a devoted wife, stepping into the grand lobby of the Hyatt Regency in downtown Chicago, her pulse quickening at the thought of surprising her husband on his routine business trip. Yet instead of his welcoming embrace, she is greeted by a sight that rips her world apart. A tender kiss shared between him and a mysterious woman in a sleek black coat. In that single heart-stopping moment, everything changes. Secrets spill into the open heart's break, and as a new chapter begins, it unfolds into a storm of regret, revenge, and the ultimate fight for hope. Emma Davenport woke to the sound of her alarm clock vibrating stubbornly on the bedside table, its gentle buzzing a relentless reminder of the hectic day ahead. She blinked herself awake momentarily, disoriented by the early dawn light cutting through the thin curtains. For a moment, she simply lay there, taking in the comforting smell of fresh linen and the faint lemony tang of the cleaning spray she always used. Next to her, the bed was cold and empty. Mark had left for Chicago the previous afternoon, attending yet another financial conference as part of his ever-demanding job at Harper & Green Investments. Their 3-year-old daughter Lily stirred in the next room. Emma could hear the soft hum of a lullaby playing from the child's nightlight, a small giraffe that projected stars onto the ceiling. She swung her legs off the bed and headed to Lily's room, her mind already flipping through the day's tasks. She planned to surprise Mark in Chicago that evening. Over the last few months, an uneasy feeling had gnawed at her, a suspicion she kept pushing aside. While Mark claimed to be overwhelmed with work, she wanted to see for herself if everything was really as he said. She scooped Lily into her arms, inhaling the sweet baby shampoo in her daughter's hair. A wave of resolve swept over her. For years, she had trusted Mark blindly. He was the calm, steady presence in her life, a man who made time for bedtime stories and neighborhood barbecues even as he rose through the ranks of his firm. Yet something had changed. It was in the way he avoided her eyes at the dinner table, in the vague excuses he made after late-night phone calls. Emma needed clarity, and she was determined to get it. Despite her growing worries, Emma couldn't forget the man who once charmed her with fresh daisies on their first date. In the early days, Mark was her everything. They had met by chance at an art gallery in downtown Seattle, introduced by mutual acquaintances. Emma had been immediately drawn to his warm laugh and quiet confidence. They shared a passion for exploring museums, volunteering at local charities, and dreaming of a future filled with travel love and children. But as Mark climbed higher in his career, work trips became the norm. It started slowly, a day trip to Los Angeles, a 2-night conference in Boston. Emma had brushed off any concerns back then, reminding herself that she had married a man with ambition. His success was their success. But with each promotion, Mark's job demands soared. His phone was forever buzzing with new messages. His eyes flickered with tension whenever she asked questions. A month ago, Emma found a receipt in Mark's coat pocket from the St. Regis Hotel in Chicago. It was for a lavish dinner for 2. Mark had told her it was merely a networking meal with a prospective client named Mr. Townsend. Yet the scrawled signature on the receipt wasn't Mark's handwriting. Alarm bells rang in Emma's mind, but she was too afraid to push him, afraid of what she might learn. In the back of her mind, she clung to a fragile hope that there was an innocent explanation. That morning, as she kissed Lily goodbye and entrusted her to the care of her mother, Linda Pierce, Emma's nerves twisted in her stomach. She told herself she was just going to surprise Mark, to remind him that his family was right here, waiting and loving him. She prayed that her doubts were unfounded, and that by nightfall they would be laughing about her silly suspicions. She had no idea that what she would witness in a few short hours would change everything. The drive from their suburban home in Lake Forest to Chicago was typically just over an hour, but traffic stretched it to nearly 2. Emma found herself tapping her fingers anxiously on the steering wheel, eyes flicking to the clock every few minutes. She had planned her arrival to coincide with Mark's break between conference sessions. The plan was simple: appear in the hotel lobby around 7 in the evening. Text him to meet her by the grand staircase and greet him with a heartfelt kiss. She hoped the spontaneity would reignite the spark that had dwindled over the past year. As she navigated the bustling city streets, Emma remembered how much she used to love Chicago. She had attended college here years ago and always found an unmatched energy in its towering skyline. Now the once exciting metropolis felt daunting, its tall buildings pressing in on her. She turned onto Michigan Avenue, weaving through throngs of pedestrians. With every mile, her heart pounded faster. She parked in an underground garage and made her way to the Hyatt Regency, an enormous structure that soared above the city. Emma swiped a bit of lipstick across her lips, checked her reflection in the mirrored panels near the revolving doors, and took a calming breath. She tried not to let her anxious thoughts overshadow her intentions. If she was going to face Mark, it had to be with confidence. Clutching her purse, she stepped into the grand lobby with its marble floors and lofty ceilings. She could almost imagine Mark's surprised grin, the way he'd lift her up in a twirl. But as she scanned the opulent space, she didn't see him at the lounge or by the registration desk. Instead, she saw something else, something that made her freeze in her tracks. There near the bar area, under soft golden lights, sat Mark. He wasn't alone. A woman with dark, cascading hair leaned close, her hand resting intimately on his arm. Emma's brain struggled to process what she was seeing. For a second, she prayed it was some misunderstanding. Perhaps this was a colleague, and they were discussing business details. But then Mark turned to the woman, and their lips met in a slow, unmistakably romantic kiss. Emma felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Numbness washed over her entire body. Her feet rooted to the spot, and it was as if the rest of the world faded away, leaving only the horrifying sight of her husband kissing a stranger. It was surreal, like a bad dream from which she couldn't wake. She stood there not more than 20 feet away, unnoticed by Mark. The woman, elegantly dressed in a fitted black coat pulled back and gazed adoringly at him. Emma recognized that look. It was the look of someone deeply involved. She realized with acute clarity that this wasn't just a casual fling. This was something that had been going on long enough for them to appear entirely at ease in public. Tears pricked the back of her eyes, but fury overcame her shock. How dare he do this here so blatantly? She wanted to stride across the lobby. Slap him. Make a scene. 1,000 impulses warred in her mind. Heartbreak, anger, confusion, and the fragile remains of her dignity. Ultimately, she took a shaking breath and backed away, retreating into the shadows of the expansive corridor, leaving Mark and his mistress, who for now remained oblivious to Emma's presence. Emma didn't remember how she got from the hotel to the street. One moment, she was inside that marble lobby, watching Mark betray her. The next, she was stumbling onto the sidewalk, swallowing lungfuls of the frigid Chicago air. Her phone buzzed in her purse, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it. If it was Mark, she didn't want to talk to him. If it was anyone else, she couldn't summon the strength to explain what she'd just witnessed. For what felt like hours, she wandered aimlessly along the streets, tears streaming down her cheeks. She replayed the scene in her head over and over, each iteration stabbing deeper than the last. Glimpses of their life together flashed before her eyes. Mark's smile on their wedding day, the time he wept with joy when Lily was born, the nights he would scoop her into his arms and promise her the world. How could that same man now be kissing another woman without remorse? Eventually, she found herself standing near a small park, the lights from a nearby cafe illuminating the tears on her face. She sank onto a bench and let her emotions course through her. Anger flared white-hot, mingling with heartbreak. She wanted answers, yet the thought of confronting Mark right now was too much to bear. Her phone buzzed again. Summoning her nerve, she pulled it out to see a text from her mother Linda, who asked, "How's the surprise going? Is Mark excited?" Lily's asking for her daddy. Emma's gut twisted as she read the words. How could she ever explain this to Lily? She typed a quick, shaky reply. "Not great. I'll be home soon." Then she hailed a taxi back to her car, her mind already plotting her next move. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, waiting for Mark to return from Chicago. She had no intention of revealing she had gone there to see him. Let him try to lie his way out. First, she wanted to see how deep his betrayal would go. Around midnight, Mark finally strode into the house with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and the faint smell of hotel soap clinging to his skin. "Hey, honey," he greeted, sounding casual, almost loving, as though nothing was amiss. "Conference ran late. You didn't have to wait up." Emma forced a tight smile. "I wanted to see you," she replied coolly. In truth, she was marveling at his ability to pretend. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, and she felt the urge to scream at him to demand he'd tell her the truth. But she waited, letting the tension build between them. Mark went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and offered Emma one as well. As he turned around, she fixed him with a steady gaze. "Did you have dinner with Mr. Townsend again?" she asked, voice trembling lightly. He hesitated, eyes flicking away for the briefest moment before returning to hers. "Yeah," he lied smoothly. It was all business, just like before. Emma's anger flared at the blatant untruth. She clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. She could feel her composure crumbling. Suddenly she snapped. "Stop lying to me, Mark. I saw you." His glass of water slipped from his fingers, shattering on the tile floor. For a moment, neither of them moved. The confession hung in the air, heavier than the tension that preceded it. "Saw me," he whispered, face draining of color. Emma gulped a shaky breath, eyes brimming with tears. "I was at the Hyatt tonight. I saw you with her." She spat the final word with venom, each syllable echoing with betrayal. Mark's mind whirred as he scrambled to regain control of the situation. Emma watched his expressions shift from shock to denial, then to something like desperation. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally managed. "It's not what you think." Emma laughed a harsh, broken sound. "Oh, really?" "Because it looked like you and that woman were pretty cozy," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "Is she your mistress?" Mark raked a hand through his hair. She's Veronica Graham," he admitted, voice low. "She's a colleague from the firm. We've been seeing each other." Emma's stomach lurched, and she turned away, unable to look at him. Of all the words she expected to hear, his direct admission of guilt was both validating and soul-crushing. Why, she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. "Why would you do this to us?" He took a faltering step forward, only to stop when he saw her recoil. "It just happened." Mark tried, his voice shaking. "I've been under a lot of stress. Veronica understands my work. She's there late at night, pulling the same hours, dealing with the same pressures." "Don't!" Emma hissed, tears streaking her face. "Don't you dare reduce this to stress and late nights. We have a child, Mark. We had a life." He wiped a hand across his face. "I never stopped loving you," he insisted. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." "That's a convenient word," she spat, "and one that doesn't mean much now. You think you can just come back, say it was a mistake, and everything is fine." She turned away again, her voice dropping to a pained whisper. "I trusted you." Mark tried to speak, but she cut him off with a trembling hand. "It's too late for apologies. You made your choice." With that, she fled to their bedroom, leaving him alone in the kitchen, shards of broken glass and cold water pooling around his feet, a fitting metaphor for the ruin of their marriage. Emma had always believed she could handle anything if she and Mark faced it together. But that night, as she curled into a tight ball on their bed, she realized she was on her own. The magnitude of his betrayal crushed her. The man she thought she knew inside and out had been leading a double life. How could she ever trust him again? Throughout the night, Emma wrestled with her thoughts. She heard Mark downstairs making phone calls, likely to Veronica. She wondered if he was telling her that Emma knew. The idea of them discussing her pain so casually left her furious and humiliated. She knew she couldn't stay in that house, playing the role of dutiful wife while Mark sorted out his affair. When Lily's soft cries broke the silence at dawn, Emma rose mechanically. She realized with sudden clarity what she had to do. She needed to leave. Emma's first priority was her daughter, protecting her from the fallout of this nightmare. As Lily's innocent eyes opened, Emma forced a reassuring smile onto her face, but inside her heart was in shreds. Once Lily was fed and dressed, Emma scribbled a short note for Mark. "I'm taking Lily away for a while. Don't follow us. We need space." She set the note on the kitchen counter, next to the shards of broken glass that still lay there from the night before Mark hadn't even bothered to clean them up. It was symbolic, she realized, of how little he cared for order, now that his secret was out. Emma packed a suitcase, taking only essentials. She called her mother, but Linda didn't pick up. She didn't leave a voicemail. She wanted to make her move before Mark woke up. Give herself a head start. Within half an hour, Emma had Lily strapped into the back seat of the car, and was pulling away from the life she had known. She drove eastward, not entirely sure where she was going. Emma had distant relatives in Michigan, an aunt named Eleanor, who'd moved to a lakeside property near Traverse City. It was a place Emma had visited a few times in childhood. Aunt Eleanor and Emma's mother had never been close, but Emma remembered her aunt as a kind, if somewhat reserved woman. With no other plan in mind, Emma dialed the number she found in an old address book tucked away in the glove compartment. To her relief, Eleanor picked up on the second ring, after a hasty explanation that left out most details. Emma asked if she and Lily could stay for a while. "We just need to get away," she confessed in a trembling voice. Despite years of little contact, Eleanor hesitated only for a moment before agreeing. The promise of a temporary haven calmed Emma's racing heart. She pressed down on the accelerator, determined to put as much distance as possible between them and Mark. Lily dozed in the back seat, hugging her little stuffed elephant. Every now and then Emma glanced in the rearview mirror, tears stinging her eyes. She felt guilty uprooting Lily's life, but she believed she was protecting her daughter from the emotional storm. For now, at least they would be safe in a remote lakeside cottage, away from the chaos Mark's actions had unleashed. As the cityscape gave way to open highway, and then rolling farmland, Emma's thoughts drifted to what would happen next. She had no clear plan. The heartbreak was too fresh to think about lawyers or custody battles. But one thing was sure: she would not let Mark's betrayal define her or harm Lily. If he wanted to keep playing the role of an unfaithful husband, he would do it alone. Mark awoke in an empty house. The silence, usually comforting after a long trip, felt suffocating. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at his phone. No new messages from Emma. Confusion prickled at his mind. Normally Lily would be chattering in the living room, or Emma would have breakfast ready. He rolled out of bed, the events of the previous night seeping back into his consciousness like a poison. He found Emma's note on the kitchen counter. His stomach lurched as he read it. "I'm taking Lily away for a while. Don't follow us. We need space." Shock turned to panic. She was gone, and she had taken Lily. Mark ran a hand through his hair, guilt and fear swirling together. He reached for his phone, dialing Emma's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried Linda's number, hoping her mother would have some information, but Linda sounded just as alarmed when Mark mentioned Emma's disappearance. "What do you mean she's gone?" Linda demanded. "She left Lily with me yesterday morning. Now you're saying she took Lily away." When Mark's stunned silence answered her question well enough, and Linda hung up in anger, promising to find her daughter, Mark paced the house like a trapped animal, scanning for any sign of where Emma might have gone. He scoured her desk drawers, the bedroom closet, even the attic. There was no clue. All he found were the heartbreakingly empty spaces where Emma's clothes had been. The realization that she had planned this departure, packed Lily's things, wrote the note, and left without looking back, crushed him. He knew he had done this. He was the one who'd introduced deceit into their marriage, and now, facing the consequences, the depth of his regret began to sink in. But regret wouldn't bring Emma back. If he wanted to salvage anything, he would have to take drastic steps to win back his family's trust, assuming Emma would even give him the chance. Days stretched into a week, and still Emma did not return. Mark reached out to everyone he could think of: mutual friends, acquaintances, even distant relatives, but no one knew where Emma and Lily might be. In a moment of desperation, Mark confided in his best friend and co-worker, James Overton. James's advice was blunt. "You need a lawyer." Reluctantly, Mark scheduled an appointment with Rebecca Slater, a top family law attorney in Chicago. Sitting in her sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Mark felt exposed and vulnerable. Rebecca studied him from behind her large mahogany desk, her expression unreadable. "So your wife left," she stated, scanning over the initial paperwork he had filled out, "and she took your child with her. Have you received any official communication regarding a divorce or custody arrangement?" Mark shook his head. "No. She left a note. That's it." "I've tried calling, texting, no response." Rebecca folded her hands. "Did you give her cause?" Mark's face burned. He cleared his throat. I had an affair." She found out. Rebecca nodded her gaze, never wavering. Infidelity can certainly precipitate drastic actions. "Look, we can file a petition for a formal custody arrangement, but if she hasn't filed for divorce yet, it's a bit tricky." "Are you sure you want to go down that path immediately?" "Sometimes it escalates things beyond repair." Mark hesitated, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. All he truly wanted was to fix things with Emma, to apologize, to beg her forgiveness. But Emma was gone, and he had no idea how to reach her. "I just want to see my daughter," he whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." Rebecca's face softened slightly. "Let's hold off on immediate legal action. I'll do some private searching, see if we can find out where she might be staying. Once we know that, you can decide how to proceed. In the meantime, gather financial statements, property details, everything." Mark left her office feeling more lost than ever. He had set a ruinous ball in motion by kissing Veronica that night in the hotel lobby, by allowing their affair to blossom in the first place. Now, with Emma and Lily vanished, he realized the gaping void where his family used to be. For the first time, the possibility of never seeing them again crushed him beyond measure. Emma found a quiet solace in Aunt Eleanor's lakeside home. The weather was beginning to warm, melting the last patches of snow around the cabin's perimeter. Lily, oblivious to the drama unfolding, loved splashing at the shoreline with her tiny boots. She giggled when the cold water touched her toes and made a game of collecting shiny pebbles. Aunt Eleanor was an enigma. She did not pry for details about Emma's sudden arrival. Instead, she offered the comforts of home warm meals, a cozy bedroom, and an ample supply of patient understanding. Emma was grateful for the sanctuary. When she couldn't sleep at night, she'd wander down to the dock, staring out at the moonlit lake. The stillness of the water mirrored her new sense of limbo, not quite sure where she was headed, but certain she couldn't go back to the life she left. One evening, Aunt Eleanor joined Emma on the dock, handing her a steaming mug of tea. They stood in silence for a while, the night breeze rippling across the lake's surface. Finally, Eleanor spoke in her measured, quiet voice. "I don't need to know everything that happened, dear, but I can see the pain in your eyes." Emma nodded, tears brimming. "He cheated," she said, simply. "I saw him, there's no doubt." Aunt Eleanor inhaled slowly. "I'm so sorry," she replied, setting a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'd never presume to tell you what to do, but know that if you need time, or if you need someone to lean on, I'm here." Emma exhaled shakily. "I just can't believe he'd throw away our family like that. Now I'm afraid of the future. Afraid he'll try to take Lily, or that I'll never be able to stand on my own 2 feet again." Eleanor's gaze was firm, yet kind. "Emma, you're stronger than you think. Start with today. Focus on what you need right now to keep yourself and Lily safe and stable." Over the following weeks, Emma took on small tasks to help Eleanor around the property. She found a moment of peace in the rhythm of raking leaves and planting new flowers. Lily thrived on the freedom chasing after butterflies and squealing with delight whenever a duck paddled near the shore. The constant ache of betrayal was still there, but day by day, Emma felt a small kernel of strength grow within her. While Emma and Lily found an uneasy peace in Michigan, Mark's mistress Veronica, Graham, was facing her own challenges. In the aftermath of Emma's disappearance, Mark had distanced himself from Veronica, plagued by guilt and worry. Their once passionate affair, fueled by late-night strategy sessions and stolen kisses in the office corridor, had begun to sour under the weight of real-life consequences. Veronica was no stranger to ambition. She thrived in the fast-paced environment of Harper & Green Investments. But rumors circulated quickly in corporate hallways. Whispers of the married Mark Davenport's affair reached many ears, and it didn't take long for people to link it to Veronica. The sly looks and hushed judgments weighed on her every time she walked into the office. She confronted Mark about his sudden coldness one evening when he agreed to meet her at a discreet cafe near their workplace. "I feel like you're punishing me for something." "We both chose," Veronica said, frustration evident in her voice. Mark rubbed his forehead. He looked tired, older somehow. "I'm not punishing you," he insisted. I'm worried about Emma and Lily." "She's gone, Veronica. I have no clue where she is. And it's my fault." Veronica reached out to take his hand, but Mark pulled away. The rejection stung. "You can't blame yourself entirely," she tried. "We both knew what we were doing. Emma finding out, well, that was never going to be clean or easy." Mark stared into his coffee cup. "That doesn't help," he said, voice hollow. "I need to make this right, but I don't even know how. Everything is a mess." Realizing the rift that had formed, Veronica felt resentment rise within her. She had risked her reputation and emotional well-being for a man who now seemed bent on retreating into his guilt. Still, she clung to the hope that she and Mark could weather the storm. After all, their bond went beyond mere lust, or so she believed. Frustrated by Rebecca Slater's slow progress and desperate for answers, Mark hired a private investigator named Jason Rudd. Jason came highly recommended by James Overton, who had once used him for a sensitive corporate matter. Though Mark felt uneasy about spying on his own wife, he rationalized that he had no other choice if he wanted to see Lily again. Jason was a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor and penetrating eyes. He listened intently as Mark recounted the night Emma left the note and the total lack of communication since. "She's not using her credit cards or her phone. At least I can't trace anything," Mark explained anxiously. Jason nodded. "She's being cautious. Likely she's using cash or a secondary bank account you're not aware of." He tapped a pen against his notepad. "Any family she might rely on. Friends outside your circle." Mark thought about Emma's mother, but Linda didn't seem to know anything. Then he remembered Emma's father had passed away years ago. She has an aunt, I think, on her mother's side. Eleanor something. They weren't very close. Jason jotted down the name. Eleanor. "That's a start." He handed Mark a stack of forms. "Sign these. I'll check phone records, any property ownership under that name. It might take a while, but we'll find them." As Mark complied, his heart pounded with conflicting emotions. Hiring a PI felt like a violation of Emma's privacy, but the alternative, doing nothing, left him paralyzed. The memory of her tear-streaked face the night she confronted him sliced through his guilt. He told himself he was doing this for Lily's sake, to be a father again, to fix what he'd broken. A small part of him feared what he'd say if he actually found Emma. Could they repair the marriage? Would she ever forgive him? Each question led to more uncertainty. Yet, Mark pushed forward, fueled by desperation. Weeks passed in Michigan. Emma's life fell into a quiet, routine breakfast with Aunt Eleanor, and Lily walks by the lake, occasional trips to the small town for groceries. She had saved enough money to sustain them for a while, and Aunt Eleanor refused any rent payments, insisting Emma's presence was enough. Still, Emma knew she couldn't hide forever. She spent her nights reading about divorce laws, spousal support, and child custody. The words swam before her tired eyes, overwhelming her with legal jargon. She jotted questions in a notebook, hoping to someday get real legal advice. One afternoon, Emma received a phone call on the new prepaid cell phone she had purchased under a false name. To her surprise, it was Linda Pierce, her mother. Emma froze, torn between her desire to talk to the woman who raised her and her fear that Mark might be tracking their communication. "Mum," Emma whispered, stepping out onto the cabin's porch. "Oh, thank God," Linda exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "Emma, are you all right? Mark told me you left, but he doesn't know where you are." Emma hesitated, tears springing to her eyes. She missed her mother desperately, but she also feared that Linda might share her location with Mark. "We're safe," she managed. "I can't tell you where, though." "Not yet." Linda sniffled. "I won't force you, but please know I'm worried." "Lily is okay." "She's fine, Mum. She's healthy and happy." Emma looked toward the lake where Lily was chasing after a butterfly. He betrayed me, Mum. I can't go back. Not now." "I understand," Linda replied. "I don't know what to think of Mark anymore. He seems genuinely torn up. But this is your decision, dear. Just promise me you'll stay in touch. I won't tell him anything you don't want me to." Emma allowed herself a tiny measure of comfort. "Thank you, Mum. I'll call again soon." As the call ended, Emma felt a strange combination of relief and guilt. She had reconnected with her mother, but she still felt guilty for cutting off Mark entirely. Yet every time she pictured him with that other woman, the heartbreak flared anew. She reminded herself she was protecting Lily, and she had no obligation to rush back into Mark's arms. Back in Chicago, Jason Rudd's investigation bore fruit. He discovered that a certain Eleanor Pierce owned a modest lakeside property near Traverse City, Michigan. Public records indicated a recent utility spike, suggesting new occupants. Jason presented his findings to Mark in a manila envelope one morning at a discreet coffee shop. "This is likely where your wife is staying," Jason said matter-of-factly. "Based on what I've gathered, she's been there for at least a few weeks." Mark's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. A property deed with Eleanor Pierce's name, some bank transactions for groceries, a few photographs of Emma's car, parked discreetly off the main road. Guilt and hope twisted together in his chest. She was within driving distance, alive and well with Lily. "What do I do now?" Mark asked quietly. Jason shrugged. "That's your call. Legally, you can attempt to force her to return, or at least negotiate custody. But if you truly want to reconcile, showing up with a court order might not be the best approach." Mark swallowed hard, thinking of Emma's tearful face. "I just want to see my daughter," he repeated. "I want Emma to know how sorry I am." Jason gave him a curt nod. "Then go. But I'd advise you do it gently." Fueled by this revelation, Mark set out that same afternoon. The drive seemed endless, his thoughts a maelstrom. Would Emma slam the door in his face? Would she let Lily see him? Did he even deserve forgiveness? Each mile brought him closer to answers, he might not be ready to hear. Late evening shadows stretched across the gravel road as Mark pulled up to the address Jason had provided. The cottage stood near the water's edge, lights glowing softly inside. Mark parked a short distance away, heart pounding in his ears. He approached the front porch, his mouth dry as sand. His footsteps sounded unnaturally loud on the wooden steps. Before he could knock, the door swung open, revealing Aunt Eleanor. She regarded him calmly, her lips a thin line of disapproval. "Mark," she said, voice cool. "I knew you'd come eventually." He nodded, swallowing hard. "May I see Emma?" Eleanor stepped aside, but didn't invite him in. "I'll get her. Wait here." Moments later, Emma appeared in the doorway. Her face paled at the sight of him, and she instinctively turned to check on Lily, who was napping in another room. Closing the door behind her, she joined him on the porch, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. "How did you find us?" she demanded, voice trembling with anger. Mark clenched and unclenched his fists. "I had to. I hired a PI. Emma, I'm sorry." "Sorry," she repeated bitterly. "You come here with a private investigator's evidence spying on me and say you're sorry." He blinked back tears. "I couldn't just do nothing." "Emma, please. I had to see Lily. I'm not here to take her away. I want to see my daughter. And I want to talk. Can we please talk?" Emma stared at him, her emotions warring across her face. She glanced back at the cottage where Aunt Eleanor hovered in the doorway. Finally, she exhaled. "Fine. But Lily is asleep, and I don't want you waking her. We'll talk on the dock." Mark nodded, following her across the small yard to the lakeside dock. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting an ethereal glow over the surface. They stopped at the edge, the gentle sound of lapping waves filling the tension between them. They stood in silence for a moment, before Mark spoke, his voice cracking. "I've been going crazy not knowing where you were, if you were safe." Emma's jaw tightened. "I'm safe enough," she replied, her gaze fixed on the dark water. "And Lily is fine too. No thanks to you." Mark swallowed the lump in his throat. "I deserve that. Emma, I don't know if it helps, but I ended things with Veronica. I told her it's over. I'm willing to quit my job if that's what it takes to show you I'm serious about our marriage." Emma turned to look at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Our marriage?" she echoed. "You broke our marriage the moment you slept with her. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was for me to see you two together in that lobby?" His own eyes grew misty. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I was an idiot. I got caught up in the pressures of work, the excitement there's no excuse. I just want a chance to make it right." Emma laughed bitterly, tears spilling over. "Make it right? How, Mark? You expect me to pretend this never happened, to forget the image of you kissing her?" Her voice shook with anger. "You lied to me. You lied about business trips, about dinners with Mr. Townsend. You chose her over us. I never chose her over you." Mark insisted, his words tumbling out. "I was confused." Emma raised a trembling hand, stopping him. "That's the thing, Mark. You did choose her every time you went to her hotel room or stayed late at the office for those so-called meetings. Now it's too late to say it was a mistake. The damage is done." Mark's breath hitched. "Do you hate?" Emma's tears fell in earnest. "I hate what you've done. I hate that I have to look at Lily and know you betrayed us." She shook her head. "But I'm also hurt, and part of me still loves you. I hate that the most." A choking sob escaped Mark's lips. He reached out to her, but she stepped back. They stood there raw and wounded under the moonlight, an unbridgeable chasm between them. Their conversation stretched into the late hours. Emma refused to let Mark inside the cottage, but she eventually relented to his request to see Lily in the morning. They sat under the starlight, discussing logistics, how Mark might visit without driving Emma away for good, how to handle finances in the interim. When Emma finally slipped back into the cottage, Mark slept fitfully in his car. His mind reeled from the confrontation, from Emma's tearful rage, from the faint glimmer of hope that she had not declared outright that their marriage was over. At dawn, Lily's voice roused Emma from sleep. The child was excited to see the ducks on the lake, babbling in her toddler speak. Emma's heart clenched, knowing Mark was waiting just outside. She made a quick decision and led Lily to the porch. There Mark stood with dark circles under his eyes and a weary smile. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly, crouching down to Lily's eye level. The child looked unsure, hugging Emma's leg. For a moment, heartbreak flickered across Mark's face. He reached out gently, and Lily hesitated before stepping forward. "Daddy missed you," he whispered, pulling her into a delicate hug. Emma watched tears brimming again. She reminded herself that Lily deserved a father, even if he was flawed. That tiny moment of reunion was enough to tear at Emma's carefully constructed wall. Part of her wanted to lash out and push him away. Another part wanted to bury her face in his chest to recall the warmth of the man she had loved. They spent a tense half-hour together, Mark helping Lily feed the ducks. Emma standing off to the side, arms folded protectively. When Lily asked if Daddy was coming home, Emma felt the sting of tears once again. She shook her head silently, unable to speak. Mark glanced at her, his eyes filled with regret. "Let's take this one step at a time," he murmured, more to Emma than to Lily. She gave him a curt nod, swallowing the pain, and hoping for Lily's sake that they could find a way to coexist, whatever that might look like. Over the following days, Mark rented a small cabin in the same area, a few miles down the lake. Emma allowed him carefully supervised visits with Lily, ensuring the child didn't suffer the sting of confusion or broken promises. It was an uneasy truce. Emma refused to discuss a permanent reconciliation. Her wounds were still too fresh. But she also didn't push for an immediate divorce, torn between her lingering love for Mark and her deep-seated anger. Aunt Eleanor silently observed the delicate dance between them, offering Emma private words of support, but never overstepping. She saw the torment in Emma's eyes and recognized the complexity of heartbreak, betrayal, and love colliding. Occasionally, Emma and Mark found themselves talking about mundane things, Lily's bedtime routines, her favorite songs, or what she ate for lunch. These trivial exchanges felt odd, yet somehow comforting. They were a reminder of the normalcy they once shared. Meanwhile, Mark's guilt weighed heavily. He kept his distance, respecting Emma's boundary. Each time he saw Lily's face light up at his arrival, he felt a dual pang of joy and despair. Would he ever be fully forgiven? Or was he doomed to this half-life, desperately clinging to fatherhood, while Emma rebuilt her own world without him? A month into this arrangement, Veronica made an unannounced appearance. She had tracked Mark's sudden absence from work, discovered his leads about Emma's location, and decided to confront him. Her arrival sent shockwaves through the fragile peace Emma and Mark had established. Veronica showed up at Mark's rented cabin, her eyes blazing with anger and betrayal. "You haven't returned my calls or texts," she spat. "I had to find you on my own. So this is where you ran off to playing house with your wife again?" Mark stiffened. "It's not like that," he tried to explain. Veronica, I told you it's over. Emma and Lily are my family. I'm trying to fix things. Veronica let out a scornful laugh. Fix things. You think you can just walk away from me, from everything we shared? She gestured around. Did you expect me to just vanish so you could rebuild your perfect suburban life? Mark felt a surge of irritation mixed with shame. We made a mistake, he said through gritted teeth. I'm owning up to it now. There's nothing more to say. Unfortunately, Emma had arrived at that exact moment, intending to drop Lily off for a short visit. She froze at the sight of Veronica, her heart pounding with renewed fury. The scene was all too much, a vicious reminder of the betrayal that had driven her here in the first place. Veronica turned at the sound of Emma's footsteps, her stare turning icy. So this is the woman you ran away to, she said, her tone dripping with contempt. Isn't it ironic? Emma, you ran, he chased you, and now the mistress is left behind. Before Emma could respond, Mark stepped forward. Veronica, that's enough. This is between me and Emma. But Emma couldn't hold back her outrage. She marched up to Veronica, voice trembling. Don't you dare twist this. You tore our marriage apart, and now you have the nerve to come here. Veronica's eyes flashed. Your marriage was already in trouble, sweetheart. That's why Mark was with me in the first place. Emma's hand flew before she could stop herself, slapping Veronica hard across the face. Veronica staggered back, eyes wide with shock. Lily, who was strapped into a car seat behind Emma, began to cry at the commotion. Mark rushed to intervene. Tears burned in Emma's eyes. She realized how easily the veneer of civility had shattered. With a shaking breath, she turned to Mark. This is exactly why I left, she said through gritted teeth. There's no peace with you. It's all lies and chaos. And in that moment, Emma vowed she would finalize her decision. It was time to end this toxic circle and protect herself and her child once and for all. That evening, Emma called a divorce attorney in Traverse City named Michael Sanders, recommended by a local acquaintance. She explained her situation, the betrayal, her temporary residence, and her desire to protect Lily. Michael listened patiently, then laid out her options. Given your circumstances, we can file here in Michigan, provided you establish residency, he explained. But typically, jurisdiction could be contested by your husband if he files in Illinois. We'll need to act carefully to ensure your rights and Lily's interests are protected. Emma nodded, her hands trembling around the phone. She felt a strange clarity settle over her, like a burden lifting off her shoulders. She would no longer hide. She would fight for her daughter's stability and for her own future. The next day, she met Michael in person. His office was modest but tidy, and Emma found his demeanor reassuring. She handed him a stack of notes and documents she had painstakingly compiled, evidence of Mark's infidelity financial records, Lily's birth certificate. I have to do this, she said, voice wavering. I can't live in this in-between anymore. Michael patted her hand. You're making a brave choice. We'll file the necessary paperwork. Be prepared your husband may contest it, and the process might get messy. But I'll guide you every step of the way. Emma exhaled. Thank you, she whispered, tears hovering in her eyes. I want peace. For Lily and for myself. When Mark received the divorce papers by courier at his rented cabin, a wave of nausea nearly knocked him off balance. Even though he suspected this outcome, seeing it in black and white was a shock. The words hammered home the finality of what was happening. He hurried to Emma's cottage, ignoring the voice in his head that told him she might slam the door in his face. Aunt Eleanor answered her disapproval as evident as ever, but she allowed him to step inside when he begged for a moment of Emma's time. In the living room, Emma stood with her hands folded, her expression resigned. "You got the papers," she said calmly. Mark lifted the manila envelope. "Is this really what you want?" Emma swallowed her eyes, shimmering with tears she refused to shed. "I don't see any other way. You cheated on me, Mark, and then you brought all that chaos here. I can't expose Lily to that kind of turmoil. She deserves better." He sank onto the sofa, shaking his head. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me easily. But can't we try counseling or a trial separation? Do we have to go straight to divorce?" Emma softened for a second, her gaze drifting to the hallway where Lily was playing. "I wish I could say yes," she murmured. "But we tried coexisting. Look what happened. Veronica showed up and it all fell apart again. I can't keep living like this, Mark. My heart is broken. I need to move on." Mark felt tears sting his eyes. "What about custody?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I don't want to lose Lily." Emma's jaw tightened. "We'll figure out an arrangement. She needs her father, but not if it means I'm constantly in agony." Mark nodded, tears slipping down his face. "I understand." He stood clutching the divorce papers as though they weighed 1,000 pounds. Before leaving, he managed a broken whisper. "I'm sorry, Emma. I love you. I always will." She didn't respond as he walked out the door. Only after he left did Emma allow herself the luxury of sinking to the floor, sobbing quietly, while Aunt Eleanor gently stroked her hair. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal filings, mediation sessions, and tense negotiations. Emma insisted on primary custody of Lily, with Mark allowed scheduled visitation. Despite his initial resistance, Mark eventually agreed. He realized that forcing a bitter custody battle would only hurt Lily, and he truly wanted the best for his daughter. Veronica, feeling the sting of rejection and the tarnish to her professional reputation, distanced herself from Mark and eventually left Harper & Green Investments to start over elsewhere. The last Mark heard, she had moved to New York, chasing another career opportunity, leaving Chicago and her entanglement with Mark behind. As the legalities of divorce progressed, Emma found unexpected support in her mother. Linda visited the lakeside cottage, bonding with Lily and offering Emma a shoulder to cry on. Slowly, Emma felt the suffocating pain, ease replaced by a cautious hope for the future. She began exploring freelance writing opportunities online, using her background in communications to earn an income. Mark, too, had to rebuild. He resigned from Harper & Green Investments after the scandal and took a lower-profile position at a smaller firm in the same industry. He attended therapy, trying to unravel the emotional blind spots that had led him astray. Though heartbreak lingered, he found solace in knowing he could still be part of Lily's life, visiting her on weekends and holidays according to the arrangement with Emma. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. The day Emma received the final decree, she stood by the lake once more, the wind ruffling her hair. A sense of bittersweet closure settled over her. She had loved Mark deeply, and part of her always would, but she understood now that love alone could not fix everything. Lily toddled up to her, holding a shiny pebble in her small hand. "For you, Mummy," she said, her eyes bright. Emma knelt down, taking the pebble and pulling Lily into a gentle hug. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's beautiful." In the distance, Aunt Eleanor watched with a soft smile. She remembered the frightened woman who had appeared on her doorstep, all those months ago, searching for refuge. Now Emma stood taller, more assured, despite the heartbreak she had endured. That evening, Emma sat down at her laptop, beginning the process of searching for a place of her own, not too far from Aunt Eleanor's property. She wanted Lily to grow up surrounded by the serenity of nature, but she also needed to carve out an independent life. The phone rang a call from Mark. He was scheduled to see Lily that weekend. Emma's hand hovered over the phone for a moment before she answered. Their conversation was polite, cordial even. In that measured exchange, Emma recognized that while their romantic relationship might be irreparably broken, they could still strive for an amicable partnership as parents. And so life began anew for Emma Davenport, no longer a suburban wife living under the illusion of marital bliss, but a single mother forging her own path, confident in her ability to protect the tiny life in her care, and determined to heal her own wounded heart. This was the story of a shocking betrayal, a bold escape, and one mother's steadfast resolve to protect her child at all costs. Emma's world turned upside down the moment she discovered her husband in that hotel lobby. Yet she found the strength to leave and start over, even when her heart still ached with love and loss. Through family solitude and a fierce commitment to her daughter, she carved a new path for them both.